Steve and I want anybody who wants to come in the office and talk about these things to come in and spend the time. And I'm sure all of our legislators would like to do that too. So the most important time to talk about these things is long before session starts. We have a lot of time, and during the summer months when we're not ever off. This is a 24/7 job, but we have time to carve out big blocks of time to talk about these things.
Welcome back to Finding Common Ground with Heather and Steve. Today we have Assemblymember Brian Miller with us, and he is going to talk about a bunch of things. We're going to focus on ADA, which is Americans with Disabilities Act, because it's the anniversary right now. 35 years. It passed, 1990, when I was still in high school. I'm aging myself, maybe. Okay, so Steve, one of the things that was so touching that I saw you sharing on social media, it was on Finding Common Ground, but you shared it on lots of platforms, was your son being highlighted in one of the ADA anniversary videos. Can you share a little bit about that? Because that was such a touching thing. And for people who don't know Steve's son, he's so quiet, very reserved. Dustin did such a great job. So I just want to give you this chance to do a little shout out for him and tell people what that was about.
Yeah, Madison County originally, I had spoke last year there. And when they called, I assumed they wanted me to talk again. But this time they asked if Dustin would talk. And you have to, like you said, he's never spoken in front of a group before, ever. He's 35 years old. He's never spoken in front of a group. To get 2 sentences out of him, like you mentioned, is like pulling teeth, because he just doesn't do it. And he hasn't all these years. And I asked him if he wanted to do it. He said yes. And I was kind of proud just at that. If that had been just all he did, I would have been proud of him just saying yes. But I said, I'm going to stay right out of it. You say what you want to do. You write what you want. And although I had no part in any of those words he spoke, I didn't practice with him. He practiced, from what I understand, at the ARC Adventures program in Kirkland, a little bit with some of the staff there in front of them. But other than that, that's all him. That was all him. And even when we got there, I asked him, because I thought he might be a little nervous. I see some of the tics he usually gets when he's a little nervous, and I saw some of them, and him trying to read off his paper a little bit when the previous speaker was on. And I asked him, Dustin, do you want me to go up there and stand next to you? And he says, no, Dad, I got this. I'm okay.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
I was floored just with that response. And then he spoke, boy, it hasn't been a prouder moment in my I could have. He might be taking over all my advocacy right now, because that could have been.
He's our next guest.
Yeah, that would have been it. As far as advocacy and how proud I am with anything I do. That was a really, really proud moment. And it not just that, but people picked up on it. I'm not the one that posted on OPWDD. They did. And they asked me, actually sent me a thing and asked, who's that guy standing next to Dustin? I said, Assemblyman Brian Miller. So that's how your name got in there in with the OPWDD thing. But they plastered it everywhere, and they said it was the words they used was it was a powerful message from a self-advocate who's the first time speaking up.
That was such a great moment. It really was. I mean, whether you know Dustin or don't know him, his words were very powerful, and it just gives you that feeling like, we are getting somewhere. And on that line of thought, when we think of the difference between 1990 and now and some of the progress that we have made, I think this is going to be a great discussion. So how do you guys know each other? You're in the same part of the state, I'm guessing.
Well, we're just about neighbors. I grew up in Sequoit, and I know Steve lives over not far from the Sequoit High School, and I believe his wife. I was a coach at the Sequoit High School, and I believe his wife's brother. I coached them in baseball when I was a baseball coach many, many years ago there. And I've run into Steve, got to know him very well at a lot of events because we're very, very active with the ARC and everything that goes on here in statewide. And we've gotten to be friends, and Steve's been in the office, and we've had great conversations, and we want to have more.
Absolutely.
So
and maybe the audience should hear that part, because I think, especially right now, with all the changes looming federally, people are nervous. Maybe reach out to your legislator, who's ever local to you, maybe on a committee that's important to you, and try to set up an appointment, either Zoom, do a phone call, email them. If you can, do it in person, because when you guys go back into session and you try to figure out what to do, we want you to have the relevant stories, the things that are happening in real time right now, impacting families, so that when you're making decisions, how do we shift this? What do we trim? What do we enhance? What do we keep the same? Is that a carve out? Can we protect that? And our legislators, guys, won't know those things if we don't speak up, if we don't reach out. We can't assume that you guys know everything about everything. I mean, before we started recording, we were talking about the thousands and thousands of bills that get put in front of you each session. And there's no way that you could possibly memorize every topic and be an expert on every piece of legislation. So how do you find it's best to get to know your constituents and get to know what are their pain points or ways you can help them?
Well, I think you talked about it very well. When once session starts, things get extremely busy. It's one bill after another. It's one advocate after another. There's a lot of things that we do. In my office, I was an engineer all my life, and we try to run it like an engineering office. We run spreadsheets with support and opposition. Tuesdays during session is lobby day, and we have meetings probably every 15 minutes. And in my office, I got probably one of the best staffs here in Albany, and I can honestly say that I got a great staff. But I try to meet with 95% of the advocates that walk in the door. But it's busy, so I'm going to back up about 4 or 5 months from the start of this. Right now is the time where you want to you guys want to go out and you want to talk to your legislators, and you want to have the meetings with them because we have more time. I do have an extraordinary amount of questions. I don't know. I can't know everything about every aspect and everything that Steve comes in the office, and we probably spent 2.5 hours just talking about what's going on here and how this program works and how that program works, and how you want to work on this bill or where we have to go. And once we left that morning, I want Steve and I want anybody who wants to come in the office and talk about these things to come in and spend the time. And I'm sure all of our legislators would like to do that too. So the most important time to talk about these things is long before session starts. We have a lot of time, and during the summer months when we're not ever off. This is a 24/7 job, but we have time to carve out big blocks of time to talk about these things.
Right, and I'm guessing by just if we take like the temperature online and hear all the different kinds of urgent messaging coming from some groups, it seems like people are very riled up, and it's like they're forecasting the worst possible news. And so the way Steve and I have been talking about this idea is the apple cart got tipped over, right? Whether you voted for it, didn't vote for it, whether you wanted it or not, this is our reality. And the way I see it, it's like a kick in the pants. Like we were doing things for a long time that were not efficient, and we were wasting money in a lot of different ways, throwing money at things that just weren't sustainable, or they weren't, set up in a way that was really efficient. we have to look at those things now because we have to, so in a way it can be very uncomfortable. It's like when your job, your company goes out of business and you're forced to move, and you have to like shift gears and learn something new. And it's really scary, but at the same time, it's an opportunity because now those innovative things that Steve walks into your office and talks about, the things that maybe there was so much red tape before, that's where the legislators can say, let's get rid of that barrier. If Steve knows how to fix this, or if my other constituent or this group has an idea, let's let them pilot it. This is the time we have to be innovative. Am I off base? Because it feels like
you're dead on with this. You've nailed it. We talk about this all the time with unfunded mandates and things that we pass bills and pass things down and look how efficient government is. And I've talked about it a lot. There's a lot of red tape, a lot of bills out there, a lot of the ways we do business now, the way we did it back in, let's go back to 1975. And these things still, our procedures and the way we do business is still that way. We have technology. We have a lot of things at our fingertips. We need to shed that skin and look at innovative ways of doing things and look at how we've really progressed on doing things and listen to you guys on your new ideas and what you found really works. Just to open our eyes up. That's what we got to do. So, the opportunities that are in front of us right now, they could be a crisis, and crisis, that's opportunities, right? And then we'll find a way to, a way to work our way through
it. That makes me feel better. It just makes me feel like the pendulum always swings back and forth. I mean, when you read about the history of New York, it didn't matter if the governor was Republican or Democrat, or if it was a man or if it was a woman, like that pendulum swings back and forth. But what the audience might not realize is that when you're a minority, the majority is the Democratic Party right now. So I don't want to get too much into the weeds because I really do want to concentrate on the ADA part. But within our state of New York, that's where the podcast is coming from, they'll cut an executive's budget. Our governor has a lot of control over what our priorities are. She can really stall things out. Like last session when she had those 3 priorities that she's like, we're not talking about anything else till I know that these are included. And I thought, how does that one woman have that much power, right? Like, how does one person direct it? And I bring it up because now with these federal changes, we have to think about what's her power. Because at one point, Governor Cuomo had a lot of power because we were in a crisis, right? We were in the middle of a global pandemic, and he had to make decisions, and there weren't times, I guess, I don't know if I agree or disagree, but you want to be able to move fast and efficiently and not tie things up when things had to be done quickly. I'm really hoping that Medicaid reform doesn't translate to an emergency situation where our governor has that kind of control. And I don't think you have the answer to that exactly, but is there any kind of reassurance, or maybe you just agree with me? Really hope that you guys get to weigh in too. I don't know.
Well, we really need to weigh in. The legislature needs to weigh in on this. I was part of, matter of fact, that was the last vote I made during the COVID pandemic before I went in the hospital with COVID and I was fighting for my life, was to give the governor complete authority over making quick decisions and moving things along. And I think, a lot after that was made, I think a lot of the legislators would really like to, not have done that way and kept some authority back with the legislature, but not knowing at that time how that pandemic was going to move and grow. And, it took a life on all of its own. Now knowing the things that we know now from that, the lessons we learned, hopefully we can apply them and not let the governor has to work with the legislature. And there's 2 branches of government here that have to work, and, we have to debate this, and we have to, those decisions can't be made solely by the governor. It has to be made with all of our input. That's the way it has to be done. And I, not knowing what these cuts are going to be and how they're going to affect everybody at this time. We're still learning about what's going to happen. I really think that we need to slow down, analyze everything, and take a good look at it and see how we can move our way through this. That's where we have to be right now.
Yeah, you need your spreadsheet, right? Like, what are my constituents saying, right?
This is really an engineering problem. It's an accounting problem. It's how we're going to do business. And I think that's what we really need to do. I think we need to take our time, analyze it, and, see how this federal bill is going to affect everybody. Mm-hmm. That's where we have to be.
And maybe we have a right to be nervous, because if you look at the state in general, there's been major disinvestment in the IDD population, the people with developmental disabilities. And I say that I've heard it from both sides of the aisle. Like the last 10 to 15 years, there's been slightly a shift. It used to be we could look at how much money the state was spending per person, like an average amount. And now it's a set amount for all of the people who qualify. It's like there's this like shift, which I guess made it easier to talk about big numbers, but at the same time, we've kind of lost the value of what each person's getting. Is it equitable if I'm in a group home compared to, if I self-direct? Is there equity between those two groups? And I was talking about this with an analyst, and I was shocked. He told me that New York State relies on group homes, that model, more than any other state in the country. Like all the other states have kind of come up with other options. There's innovative options, or not enough options maybe, but they're doing things differently than we are. We used to be a leader. Like people would look at New York State and they'd benchmark with us. And now early intervention, we rank last in the country when it comes to timeliness. Knowing how involved you are with the disability community, what do you think about that part? Because that's kind of overwhelming in a way, but at the same time, maybe an opportunity right now. But that's why we're nervous, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that to our attention. Not knowing why we made the shift the way we did, it's really hard. I need all pieces of the puzzle to put together, because I got to know why we made this shift from the individual accounting to lumping everybody, into one big number, and how New York State has lost our number one leadership role. So that's where the conversations with you and Steve and anybody else who wants to talk with us, we need to get educated on that. I wish I could give you a straight out answer. This is how we do it. But I think this is a more complex problem than just, there's not going to be one answer to it. And we really need your input to come up with a way to see where our funding model is hurt and changed, and how it can be shifted to be more effective. And I think that's where we are. We have right here in New York State, we have a $254 billion budget. And, we got to make sure we prioritize our dollars in places where they need to go. And right here's it has been one of them. That's why I've been such a big advocate for this. And so, Steve, we need another 2.5 hour sit down session.
Yeah, maybe Steve, this would be a great time to hop in with some of the things that, the projects and initiatives that might tie to ADA, but also this idea of, our legislators might not know where the critical gaps are, how long we're waiting to get to a dentist, or, just the fact that Medicaid, it's really hard to find any provider who accepts Medicaid. So I don't know, Steve, is that a good segue
look,
for you?
It all ties into ADA and people speaking up and having a voice. And at least what I try to do is try and get the families involved and get to the legislators and give the stories to them, because I think a lot of times they just don't hear the stories. They might hear it from the state officials. They might hear it from providers. They might hear it from the office of, the budget and things like that. But we're the ones that live this every day, and we know the stories and we know what's going on. And I also think that government isn't the end all. And I know A lot of people's heads are exploding right now, but I go back to what you guys said about the opportunity thing. This is a golden opportunity, I think, in my opinion, to really get to generate change down below and get families involved. And to be honest, it's working because for the first time here, you have our OPWDD state commissioner traveling around the state who's going to talk to 1,000 families on that listening tour. That was never done before. And off of that, so there's been some successes off of that already. There's a whole lot. Look, I look back at the thing that I think Assemblyman knows, I do quite a bit of work with the Utica Center for Development. I did a simple thing like tell them, I got on the board and I told them that, look, our disability community doesn't have any way to get around for events, activities, sometimes work. There's no busing, there's no nothing. And I presented a thing to them, and they bought the bus the next day. And it had helped because
so
I had found the bus. I found it, and I told them, you got to get, this is the bus you got to get. And it was a really good deal, and they got it, and it's being used by a dozen, maybe 2 dozen agencies in the area. Well, when they came and filmed at my house last week, Heather, and you know this, but I don't know if Assemblyman Miller did, a film crew came to my house, and the veterans bus was here because they wanted to see some of the projects that I'd been working on. And they were so impressed with it that they went back to, the owner of the film company went back to Albany, or I'm sorry, back to DC, where he's from, and called some philanthropists and called some friends and sent me a proposal saying they're going to buy 100 buses, 2 in every state across the country in the first year of a new nonprofit. That's not the state involvement. It's not state dollars. It's an initiative done by families, and it's an initiative done locally and with the community. And hopefully we'll use veterans groups across the United States to do it. And that's just, and we've just moved the needle, Heather.
And instead of having these silos of funding, right? Like we have these buckets and they don't interact. Why not have the veterans, like what they can bring to the table? And if the Office for Aging has something or Department of Ed, why can't we work together? I love that. Blend those funding streams, right? Make it possible. And Assemblyman Miller, that's like one of the things, right? Take away the silly regulations that make it so we can't combine funding. Here's my example. My daughter is 18 and she goes to a nonprofit right now for a summer program. She's taking community classes, but her school is paying for it. That's perfect, right? The adult service world is offering something that the school can access, but they can only pay for it a certain way. So they can't do it during the school year because of some barrier, right? And those are the things where you think, okay, it works for summer's program, but we can't do it during the school year. Like those things don't make sense. Like if we find something that works, especially right now, the funding for schools is much more set for transition. We know it's there. But if we think about Medicaid and where things could get cut, self-direction budgets could be impacted. They could be. We don't want them to be. We should be exempt. But let's say they are. We could alleviate that pressure on self-direction and use the money Department of Ed already has just by tweaking something. Like sometimes it's just one word, that's getting in the way, or schools are nervous they're going to get in trouble or audited. And nobody wants to be in trouble, but we have to be brave. We have to do hard things.
Well, it's exactly what Steve did right there. And I know we do that in this office because of our funding avenues for grants and this or that. If somebody approaches us with an idea and looking for funding for this, we look at all the funding streams, not just one. When I first went to Albany, somebody asked me what I did for a living, and I told them I was an engineer. And what they said to me was, you may not fit well here. And I said, why is that? Because we do a root cause analysis and a corrective action plan. And that's what we do. We try to be a resource to find a way to take care of an issue. And that's what we all need to do. And, maybe we can reinvent how we can direct funding into different avenues. I don't know how to do it, but but we need to be a clearinghouse, just like 211 is to us, right?
Yes.
If you call 211 and they find an avenue for you to go take care of a problem. In here in my office, one thing that helps, my chief of staff, she sits on the Arc of Herkimer board of directors. So, we're in tune with things that go on. So that's how, we have taken it one step further here to try to help. So, there's ways to do it. We just got to be industrious and find ways to go out and find the revenue sources. But the ideas that you have need to be communicated to us so we can be driven to go ahead and do that, or directed. Maybe you found a way to do it, and it's a brainstorm, and we can go ahead and find legislation, or just find just advocate on the floor, or when budgets come out, that's a great time to do it. And then our budget work really starts right, and I'm going to talk about what we were talking about before on how you can advocate better. Our budget work really starts right now. The governor is already working on her 26 or 27 budget that's going to come out, right? And but the work happens now. This is when we can make calls, find out how things work. We can start advocating for our priorities and writing letters and see if we can move things along. So now is the perfect time.
Right, because I
know I kind of took you through 13 different ways, but different directions, but they all kind of tie in together.
They do, and I think that's a good point. That sometimes something looks awesome on paper, I'm thinking of like the Board of Visitors. This was this group that was formed so that they could go visit group homes, and they were supposed to be this unbiased group, and they were supposed to report directly to the governor, like this fail-proof safeguard system. That it wasn't getting fed through anything else. It was like a direct connect. They could report to her or him and tell them what was going on in these group homes. Well, over the years, and I don't know how, that has become like really convoluted. And now the house managers meet with the Board of Visitors and they send them a report. And then the Board of Visitors sends the report to the governor. That wasn't the intent, but sometimes those kind of things happen. We had a really good idea and it kind of morphs over time, and we have to reel it back in and say, we kind of lost the whole point of that. A manager is not going to say things are bad, because then the manager gets in trouble. We can't put people in that situation where they have to police themselves. We need the other people to come in and say, oh, that doesn't look right. That poor person, that direct support professional has been here for 2 days. They haven't been able to punch out. They're tired, and we don't see that on a piece of paper. So when you're looking at numbers and, maybe an organization is presenting something to you, they're always going to make it look good if they want it to stay, right?
Yeah, but I think you hit on to something right there. The report goes to the governor. And a lot of these reports that go directly to the governor or to the speaker and the Senate and the House, a lot of times don't filter down to the legislators who really need to, see these reports. And we ask for reports all the time. So these reports being generated, it should be available. The report should be available, just a click of an email. Here's the report. Go on to this link and let everybody look at it. And then more questions will be generated that way. Right,
because something could die on our desk, right? Nobody else sees it. No, there's no sunlight on that.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, those are things that that's something for me to work on. See if we can, get these reports more available to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be good. So when we think of Americans with Disabilities Act, I had an ADA court case years ago with the United States Department of Justice, and the audience has heard me talk about it a bunch of times, but I was no ADA expert before that moment. So just for a tiny bit of context, my daughter has a life-threatening seizure disorder, and she's non-speaking, and she has a motor delay. We got her a service dog that could detect a seizure before it was going to happen, could help her walk and provided comfort, I guess, and guidance, made sure she wasn't going to elope, tell us before she was going to have a medical event. And with the assistance of this dog, she started walking independently and really building a lot of skills. She was learning how to interact with the dog. And it was really beautiful until it wasn't, when the district decided, because she couldn't verbally speak to the dog, that they didn't want their staff to verbally speak to the dog. And it turned into this huge mess where first the Department of Education stepped in for New York, and then the United States Department of Justice stepped in. And it was an ADA civil rights case. It was discrimination. They're saying, you can't use her disability against her and say she's not worthy of accommodation.
Right.
And it just opened my eyes. Now I look at the world that way and say, we're supposed to accommodate people, whether or not they have a disability that we can see. Like, we're supposed to try to even the playing field. It's not giving somebody something they don't deserve or something extra. It's just like shifting things. And that's why ADA is really important to me. And that's why I always try to use that lens. And Olmstead is another big, huge decision, legal case in New York, where we said we're going to really push and make sure we don't put people in institutions, that we give everybody the most integrated setting that's appropriate to them. So with that in mind, what does ADA mean to you guys? I would just love to hear, because sometimes people don't even know what that stands for. I know both of you do, but just to give people context, what it means to you.
Steve, you want to go first?
Yeah. He's like, you go.
Look, I hope someday that my kids can celebrate ADA, but not have to go there and talk about needs still. I'm hoping that the accommodations that, like, my son needs, and they've provided some around him, because he couldn't have gotten where he is without some of the ones he's already got. But there's kids with profound autism, much worse than his, that need accommodations and supports around him. And I hope that someday that they still celebrate it, but it's not a day of that people have to feel that they have to march with signs and stuff like that. I hope we're more accommodating down the road and make this not an issue anymore.
Well, I think we've made since 35 years, right? Or 30 years, or we've made leaps and bounds on where we've come, and I see, and in just the public's awareness of what we have now, and I think it's growing more and more, and we just can't stop today. We were in Madison County last week where Dustin gave a wonderful speech, and just where we come the last 8 years that I've been in the assembly, and and since 1995, it's going to move, but I think we still have to celebrate it every year. I really think we do, because, once we stop celebrating every year, we're probably going to lose a lot of the momentum that we have going now, and a lot of the innovation and a lot of the hard work that everybody's continuing to put into it. And, and if we don't celebrate the anniversary, we're not going to have these testimonials and stories and see where we're moving and the new ideas and the fresh ideas. So I think we're moving in the right direction. We made great leaps and bounds, but I think we've only just touched the surface. It's gonna be a long road to hoe, and that's where we are.
I was watching a clip yesterday from right around when the ADA came out with Sally Jesse Raphael. Not everybody's going to remember her, right? But she was a talk show host, and she had a family on, and they were talking about autism 30-something years ago. And they were talking about him like he was really profound. And I'm not denying whatever their reality was, because I know they didn't have what we have now. But the young man sitting on stage with a shirt and tie and a little suit coat, and his hair's cut all cute. And I thought to myself, there are a lot of my friends that would never be able to handle the sensory experience of just wearing that outfit and having their hair cut like that and being in front of cameras with light shining in their eyes. And it made me really think we've shifted the way we talk about disability now. We really do see the person. They're talking about symptoms and how delayed he was and his challenges. And you notice that now we're learning to talk about the person. Justin, is a quiet young man, but he's well-mannered and he wants to try new things. Instead of saying he's so shy and he shakes and he has tics sometimes and, he'll have a behavior if this happens. It's so refreshing when you meet somebody who's like-minded like that. And even with the legislation that I helped with this year, we did the Communication Bill of Rights. And I was just, different versions were coming across people's desks and messages were going back and forth. And I thought, I love this. I love the way it's written because it's about honoring somebody, saying, is that the way you want to communicate? Then you should. You should be allowed to communicate in the way that makes sense for you. Is there any legislation that you're working on or that you have your eyes on that you think will be one of those moments where people are like, that's such a great idea? I know you were working on I think DSP wages, a study to look at caregiver wages, if I remember correctly. But is there something,
Yeah, we're working on the wage with the DSPs. That's been a huge factor for all of us. And we made some strides, but we haven't. Legislation, we need your help to put legislation out. That's where I am. I wish I could say that I have some legislation here that we're trying to get pushed across, but you guys have the ideas for the legislation. Please bring it forward to your legislators, not only our office, but your legislators, and I'm sure that we'll get support and find out ways to work on these and move these new ideas forward. That's where we have to be.
And sometimes it takes some study first. I know we're finishing up, and this is not quite the topic, but it is a big deal to me, the CDPAP home care program. It was part of the Medicaid redesign team had come up with some ideas on ways we could save money with Medicaid. And right now there's this list of Medicaid redesign recommendations that are just kind of sitting there. And we know from the way the CDPAP rollout has gone out, it wasn't smooth, it wasn't studied. It should never have been recommended to be put into fashion the way it was. But what about all those other recommendations? It sounds like the governor can initiate them based on that. Is there a way we can pause them? Is that something we could advocate and say, listen, if we don't study something thoroughly or benchmark with other states, we should have to pause those? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Well, most legislation, most rollouts like the CDPAP, should have been paused and looked at thoroughly, not just moved the way it did. Yes, we need to pause them. We need to put some timelines in it, but it all depends on how fast the legislature wants to move on it, and if it's a governor priority. That's where your voices come in your emails and your phone calls. When you guys see that there's going to be an issue here, you need to get out in front of it before it gets initiated, and then we're trying to catch up. So that's where the pausing will be initiated. Because if we don't hear that there's a problem, because if a governor's proposal is going to be rolled out to us, we're going to hear all these positives on it, not all the negatives. And without the advocates, your input on it, we just won't know. We do research and do everything we can, but there's certain aspects that the people who it serves the most know where the problems are going to be. Mm-hmm. So that's what we need.
Okay. I'll ask one more personal question because I'm part of the Senate hearing. I was asked to testify, and I know the Assembly does hearings too. They give you 5 minutes to talk. So if the audience is listening and you've been impacted by CDPAP, you have a chance to send in written testimony. If you were called to testify in person like I was, you get 5 minutes. You can also hand in written testimony, but I just would love to pick your brain for just a couple minutes. What do I say to all these legislators who called this meeting because they're concerned, right? They want to investigate this and get down to the bottom of it. What's the most compelling way for me to share things? Am I talking about my personal story or am I talking about the trends that I see? Do you have any advice? Because I could talk for 5 hours on how it's impacted my family, but I get 5 minutes and I just want to make the most of those 5 minutes.
That's a good question. And then how you how you're going to impact and catch the legislators' ear. I truly believe your personal stories are the biggest part that you need to start out with. I know 5 minutes goes by extremely fast, but what you need to do is, get your personal story out, get the facts out there, and then follow up with the panel that's up there in their listening, and to the hearing and to the testimony, and follow up with an email to each one of the panel participants up there. That's one thing you can do. I sit on panels. I'm a ranker on the transportation committee, and we were talking about the electric vehicle chargers on the thruway and whatever. It was a great hearing. We heard the issues that were going on, but I'm a legislator that walked out in the crowd afterwards and talked to the people who gave testimony on what caught my ear, and then I talked to the other legislators. But the best thing to do is get out there, tell your personal story, give the facts. 5 minutes is quick. You're going to have to do bullets. You're going to have to be precise, but you also have to be personal, and you have to give some emotion too. I truly believe, and then follow up with the legislators that were on the on the panel after that. That's what really needs to be done.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Steve, is there anything that you want to touch on before we close out?
No, I respect the Assemblyman's time. I will take you up on coming back in. I wanted to give a shout out to your chief of staff. She's wonderful. I've worked with her before. You do have a really good staff, and you've always had your ear open to Assemblyman. I look back at all the events I've gone to over the last 5 years, and you've been to almost every one of them in the disability part of it, and that's appreciated by a lot of families, not just mine. So thank you for that. And like I said, I want to get in your offices a few topics. I'd like to talk to you about creative stuff. And I know you'll listen, so I appreciate that.
Thanks, Steve. That really means a lot. And we're here to help. This has been a work for us since I've been in the Assembly, and it goes back to when I was coaching ball at quite a long time ago. One of the families had a disabled child, one of their brothers on the team, and the father would always talk to me about it, and he still does, and he still advocates, and it's been 30 years now, so it's been a long time. So you're advocating and everything that you do, I want to be part of it, and we want to make a change, but we're here to help you. Just need to help us.
Thank you so much. I think that in the podcast description, we can include things like your contact info, but just for our audience's sake, you can go online and you can look up pretty much any legislator's email address, the phone number. You can contact them when they're in Albany, they have staff, or if they're in their hometown, you can also contact them that way. Sending a letter in the mail sometimes makes an impression because most people use email, but whatever way you're comfortable connecting with your legislator and giving them an idea of what's happening in your home, in your neighborhood, in your backyard, then when they go back into session and they're making these tough choices and they're deciding how to trim things back, we'll be in your heart and your mind, and you'll be thinking of us. And we won't just be, just a number on a piece of paper. We'll be people that you know from your community. And that's the power we have as a country, that we vote for our elected officials, and we can vote them out, and we can keep voting them in when they're doing a good job. And I've really enjoyed this conversation and your insights. So thank you so much for spending today with us, and good luck when you go back to Albany.
Okay, can I make one suggestion on your emails and your letters?
Yeah.
Don't make them a form letter. Okay, don't
the
have a
quick
bunch.
click ones.
Don't have
yeah.
a group of people put a form, and all of a sudden it comes in. Because in our office, and I'll tell you how we look at things. If Steve sends a letter in, or you send a letter in, and you wrote it, it's going to make a huge difference. We start seeing advocates send in form letters on bicycle tires.
Right.
You can use that. We see a bunch of them come in. It's like, okay, we look at them, we make sure we look at the opposition and support on whatever they're advocating for. But your personal emails, your personal phone calls, and your personal mail really, really, truly make a difference. I know we read everything that comes in here, and if you call the office here, chances are I'm going to answer the telephone too, and we'll call you back and ask for your legislators to call you back and talk about things. That's something.
That's great advice. It really is, because we always get those little one-click things. You fill in your email and your address. Print it out. Look at it. Copy and paste the things that matter to you, but personalize it, because you're right. If you get 100 of the same email, it doesn't really mean as much. That's great advice. Thank you so much. So I think that on that note, we will end today's show, and I want our audience to feel empowered. You have a lot of great ideas now moving forward. Connect with your legislators, talk to the people in your county, be like Steve, join a board, really get involved and understand how the different, funding streams and different groups can work together to help our loved ones, because this could be a difficult chapter coming up, but it's not the end of our story. And that's why we need the advocacy that we're doing right now. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time.
Continue the conversation by joining our Facebook group. If you're a fan of the show, please join our supporters club. Subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your favorite listening app, but most of all, share it with your friends. Just one more click or comment can make a huge difference and help us to continue finding common ground.